I used his company's private messaging system to send my goodbyes and his evidence. Can you believe the audacity, the sheer, unadulterated gall of a person to do what he did? I mean, who does that? And then, me, the person who was supposed to be the victim, the one who was left shattered and broken, turned the tables in a way that I still sometimes question. Was I wrong for what I did? Tell me honestly, would you have done the same thing if you were in my shoes? Let me take you back to where it all began, to a time when I was blissfully ignorant, wrapped up in a life I thought was perfect. My name is Sarah, and for 5 glorious years, I believed I had found my soulmate in Mark. He was charming, witty, incredibly intelligent, and, from what I could see, absolutely devoted to me. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue, cliché. I know, but it felt like fate. He had this easy smile that crinkled at the corners of his eyes, and he made me laugh until my sides ached. I fell hard and fast, and he seemed to reciprocate with equal fervor. Our relationship progressed beautifully, or so I thought. We moved in together after a year, sharing a cozy apartment that we lovingly decorated, each piece a memory. We talked about marriage, about kids, about growing old together in a little house with a garden. He was everything I ever wanted, my rock, my confidante, my future. He worked as a senior project manager at a rather prestigious tech company, one of those places that prided itself on innovation and a strong corporate culture. I was an artist, a painter mostly working from home, which meant I saw a lot of Mark, and I cherished every moment. We had our routines, morning coffee together, evenings filled with shared meals and long conversations, weekends exploring art galleries or hiking trails. Life was, in a word, idyllic. Then came the subtle shifts. The almost imperceptible cracks in the facade. It started with him working longer hours. At first I understood. Tech jobs are demanding, and he was ambitious. He'd come home late, tired, sometimes a bit distant. He'd brush it off, saying he had a big deadline, or a particularly difficult client. I tried to be supportive, bringing him coffee at his desk when he was working from home on weekends, making sure he had his favorite meals. But the distance grew. He'd spend more time on his phone, always claiming it was work-related, even on our date nights. He became secretive, jumping whenever I walked into the room if his laptop was open, or quickly minimizing windows. I tried to dismiss it, to tell myself I was being paranoid, that I trusted him. After all, he was Mark, my Mark, the man who had promised me forever. But a nagging feeling started to fester in my gut, a cold, insidious dread that slowly began to consume me. He started taking business trips, more frequently, distance, often extending them by a day or two. He'd be vague about the details, saying things like, "Oh, it's just a conference in Seattle," or "client meeting in Chicago." He stopped calling as often when he was away, citing poor reception or a packed schedule. I missed him terribly during these times, and my calls and texts often went unanswered for hours. When he did call, his voice would sound strained, hurried. My instincts, which I had so stubbornly tried to ignore, were screaming at me. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. I confronted him gently at first, expressing my concerns, telling him I missed our closeness, that I felt like he was pulling away. He'd get defensive, accuse me of not trusting him, of being insecure. He'd turn it around, making me feel guilty for even bringing it up. "I'm working my butt off for our future, Sarah," he'd say, "and you're here questioning my commitment." I'd apologize, feeling foolish, letting his words soothe my fears, at least temporarily. But the unease persisted. One day, while he was on one of his business trips, I was tidying up the apartment. I went into his office, a room I rarely ventured into, out of respect for his privacy. I was dusting his desk when I noticed a small, leather-bound journal tucked beneath a pile of old magazines. It wasn't something I recognized. My heart started pounding. I knew I shouldn't, but I couldn't resist. My hand trembled as I opened it. It was a diary, and the first entry I saw was dated just a few months prior. It wasn't his handwriting. It was a woman's. The words blurred before my eyes as I scanned them, disbelief warring with a horrifying certainty. It was a love letter, a passionate account of a clandestine affair, filled with intimate details and declarations of undying affection, all addressed to Mark. My dearest Mark. It began. I can't wait for our next trip together. Every moment with you is pure bliss. You truly are the most amazing man I've ever met. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. My world, which had been so vibrantly colored, suddenly turned to a bleak, desolate gray. My Mark, my wonderful, loving Mark. How could he do this to me? I kept reading, each word a dagger to my heart. She talked about their secret weekend getaways, their shared laughter, their stolen moments. She even mentioned a specific hotel in San Francisco, a place Mark had supposedly been for a tech conference. The journal was filled with photos, selfies of them together, looking incredibly happy, incredibly intimate, pictures of them kissing, laughing, holding hands. My stomach churned. I felt nauseous. There was even a photo of her wearing a necklace I had bought Mark for his birthday, a custom-made silver dog tag with our initials engraved on it. He had told me he'd lost it. A lie, another lie. The pain was excruciating, an almost physical ache in my chest. I felt like I was drowning, gasping for air in a sea of betrayal. I looked around our apartment, at the furniture we had chosen together, the paintings on the wall I had created, the life we had built. It all felt like a grotesque mockery. Every memory, every shared laugh, every tender touch was now tainted, poisoned by this horrific revelation. I wanted to scream, to smash everything, to curl up in a ball and disappear. But a cold, hard resolve began to set in. The shock gave way to an icy fury. How dare he? How dare he make a fool of me? Lie to me, betray our entire relationship. I needed answers, but more than that, I needed justice. I knew I couldn't confront him immediately. He was still away, and I needed to gather my thoughts, my evidence. I needed a plan. The journal, with its damning contents and photos, was just the beginning. I started thinking, replaying every suspicious moment, every late night, every vague explanation. I remembered him always being on his work laptop, even at home. He used their internal messaging system, a secure corporate platform, to communicate with colleagues. I had seen him using it countless times, and then a thought, cold and calculating, began to form in my mind. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. I was shattered, betrayed, and utterly alone, distance, with the man I loved proving to be a complete stranger. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have confronted him quietly? Would you have packed your bags and left without a word? Or would you, like me, have sought a different kind of retribution? I spent the next few days in a blur of numb anger. I didn't sleep, I barely ate. My mind raced, piecing together fragments of information, memories, and the horrifying truths. I meticulously photographed every page of the journal, every single picture. I even used a special app to extract metadata from the digital photos, confirming their dates and locations. I found receipts from hotels, plane tickets, and fancy dinners, all paid for by his company. Expenses he had clearly inflated and misused to fund his illicit escapades. He had been using his business trips to meet her, using company funds to pay for their romantic getaways. The audacity was astounding. This wasn't just a personal betrayal, it was professional misconduct, possibly even fraud. The more I dug, the angrier I became. My resolve solidified into something unbreakable. I wasn't just going to leave, I was going to ensure he faced consequences, distance. Not just for breaking my heart, but for abusing his position and the trust of his employers, distance. I remembered Mark often complaining about how difficult it was to access his work laptop from outside the company network without a specific VPN and two-factor authentication. However, I also knew he sometimes left his work laptop at home, especially when he was planning to work remotely over the weekend. He'd even shown me how to log in once, just in case he needed me to retrieve a file for him when he was away and couldn't access it himself. He'd told me his password was simple, something he could remember easily. A stupid, arrogant mistake on his part. I remembered it now. I went to his desk, my hand steady despite the tremor in my soul, and found his work laptop exactly where he usually left it. I booted it up. My heart was pounding, a drum solo of anxiety and vengeful triumph. I entered the password. It worked. I was in. Navigating his corporate network was surprisingly easy once I was logged into his machine. I found the private messaging system, a secure internal communication platform where employees could chat and share files. It was the perfect, insulated environment, a digital sanctuary he thought was safe. I knew what I had to do. I composed a message, carefully, meticulously. It wasn't a rant, it wasn't an emotional outburst. It was cold, factual, and utterly devastating. I started with a simple, yet profound statement. This is not Mark. This is Sarah, his girlfriend of 5 years. Then, I laid it all out. I explained our relationships, the promises, the shared life. I detailed his deception, his lies, his business trips. I described the journal, the photos, the hotel receipts, the use of company funds. I mentioned the specific names of hotels, the dates, the locations. I attached every single piece of evidence I had gathered, the photographs of the journal entries, the metadata from the love affair pictures, the scanned hotel and flight receipts with the company card details. I didn't just send it to one person. No, that wouldn't be enough. I went through his contact list. I found his direct manager, his HR representative, several of his closest colleagues, and even the CEO of the company. I sent the message with all the attached evidence to every single one of them. It was a mass email, but through their internal, secure messaging systems. There was no going back. The message also contained my goodbyes. Not to him, but to the life I had thought I had with him. I wrote, Mark, our life together is over. You chose to betray me, and now you will face the consequences of your actions, both personally and professionally. I'm leaving. Don't try to contact me. I hit send. Distance. The silence after I clicked that button was deafening, yet somehow, it was the loudest sound I had ever heard. A strange calm washed over me, a chilling sense of finality. It was done. The betrayal had been exposed, the truth laid bare, and the consequences set in motion. I knew there would be fallout, a tidal wave of it. But for the first time in weeks, the crushing weight of dread began to lift. I quickly logged out of his laptop, shut it down, and put it back exactly where I found it. Then, I began to pack. I didn't take everything, just my essentials, my art supplies, and a few precious sentimental items that weren't tainted by his lies. I called a friend, explained in broad strokes what had happened, and asked if I could stay with her for a few days. She didn't hesitate. Within hours, I was out of that apartment, distance, leaving behind 5 years of memories, shattered dreams, and a digital bomb waiting to explode. The aftermath was swift and brutal, just as I had anticipated. The next day, my phone was bombarded with calls from Mark. I blocked him. He tried texting from different numbers, leaving voicemails, each one more frantic than the last. Sarah, please. Pick up. What have you done? You've ruined everything. Good. That was the point. My friend, who worked in a different department at Mark's company, though I never mentioned it to Mark, discreetly kept me updated. The internal messaging system had indeed delivered my message to everyone I intended. The company was in an uproar. An internal investigation was launched immediately. Mark was suspended, pending review. Within a week, he was fired, not just for the affair, but for the misuse of company funds and resources, and for the severe breach of trust and company ethics. The other woman, I later learned, was a junior analyst from a different department, and she was also let go. Her journal, my meticulously gathered evidence, painted a very clear picture of their illicit activities, all funded by the company's dime. It turned out she was already married too, and her husband found out shortly after. Her life, too, imploded. I heard through the grapevine that Mark's career was effectively over in the tech industry. His name was now synonymous with scandal and professional misconduct. He tried to appeal, to deny, to deflect blame, but the evidence I provided was simply too overwhelming, too meticulously documented. He had no leg to stand on. His reputation was in tatters, his career prospects vanished. He lost not only his job but also his professional network, his standing, everything he had worked for. And he deserved every bit of it. As for me, the immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of emotions: relief, sadness, anger, and a profound sense of liberation. The pain of the betrayal lingered, a phantom limb that ached now and then, but the bitterness slowly faded, replaced by a quiet strength. I started rebuilding my life, focusing on my art, finding solace in creativity. The experience taught me a harsh but invaluable lesson about trust, about self-worth, and about standing up for myself. I realized that while revenge isn't always the answer, sometimes holding someone accountable for their actions, especially when they've caused such deep harm, is necessary for healing. It wasn't about vengeance in the end. It was about ensuring justice was served, not just for me, but for the integrity of the truth. It's been a couple of years now. I'm in a new apartment, my art is flourishing, and I'm slowly, cautiously, opening myself up to the possibility of love again. The scar remains, a reminder of what I went through, but it's no longer a gaping wound. It's a testament to my resilience. So, that's my story. I used his company's private messaging system to send my goodbyes and his evidence. Was it cold? Yes. Was it calculated? Absolutely. But sometimes, when someone shatters your world, you have to find a way to pick up the pieces and ensure they understand the magnitude of their destructions. Like this video if you were on my side and you think I did the right thing. Subscribe for more stories like this, where people navigate the complicated and often messy realities of relationships and revenge. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. I'm really curious to hear what you would have done. I'll see you all in the next story.